Imagine for a second that everything you were ever told about relationships, about society, about what men and women supposedly owe each other was flipped upside down overnight. And the people who spent decades screaming that they didn't need you suddenly woke up and realized the entire world they built only worked as long as you kept showing up. What if the moment you finally decided to stop showing up, to stop paying, to stop protecting, to stop approaching, to stop caring, the whole system started to crack, and the loudest voices on earth suddenly became the loneliest people in every room? That is not a hypothetical anymore. That is the world we are living in right now in real time. And by the time you finish watching this video, you're going to see exactly why millions of men have quietly walked away, why they are never coming back, and why the people who spent 50 years telling men to leave them alone are now making TikTok after TikTok begging those same men to please come back and save them from the reality they created. Stick with me to the very end because I am going to show you footage, data, and receipts that most channels are terrified to talk about. And when we are done, you will never look at the dating landscape, the economy, or modern relationships the same way again. If you are new here or you have been riding with me for a while and you want more angry guy breakdowns that cut straight through the noise, smash that like button right now. Share this video with every man you know who needs to hear the truth and subscribe with notifications on because we drop heat multiple times a week. While you are down there in the description, go click the link to Angry's Crypto Academy. That is where I teach regular guys step by step how to buy, sell, trade, and most importantly, protect your assets in this collapsing economy. Everything is laid out simple. No fluff, no nonsense, and thousands of men are already in there stacking and safeguarding their wealth while the world falls apart around them. Go check it out right now. The link is waiting for you. And if these videos are adding value to your life and you want to keep the angry guy fueled up and making more of them, you can buy me a Red Bull through the link in the description. Every can keeps the truth coming, and I appreciate every single one of you who throw one in the tank. Let's begin. Men walking away have officially taken their power back, and the evidence is everywhere you look if you are willing to open your eyes and see it. Walk into almost any nightclub on a Friday or Saturday night in any major city in the Western world right now and tell me what you see. You see groups of women sitting around tables that used to be covered with bottles, except now those tables are empty. No bottles, no energy, no celebrations, just clusters of single women taking selfies and wondering why the night feels dead. Why are the bottles gone? Because men used to buy them. Men used to show up. Men used to spend thousands of dollars in one night just for the privilege of being in the same room as women who never even gave them a real conversation in return. That money paid the rent for those venues. That money paid the DJ, the bartenders, the security, the promoters, everybody. And now that men have decided to stay home, play a game, lift some weights, read a book, or simply sleep, the entire nightlife economy is collapsing in real time. Promoters are panicking. Club owners are closing locations left and right. And the women who used to post Instagram stories bragging about how they never pay for anything are suddenly realizing that when men stop paying, the party is over. Look at the dating statistics if you want hard numbers instead of feelings. We now have the lowest marriage rates in recorded American history. We have the lowest birth rates ever recorded in most Western countries. We have the highest percentage of men under 40 who report zero romantic activity in the past year since they started keeping these records. And at the same time, we have record numbers of women in their late 20s, 30s, and even early 40s flooding social media with videos titled, "Where are all the good men?" or "Why won't men approach anymore?" or "Men are scared of independent women." They say it with a straight face while completely ignoring the fact that for the last 2 decades, they spent their time, energy, and influence telling men never to approach them, never to speak to them, never to look at them, never to exist in the same public space without explicit written permission renewed every 30 seconds. They told men to leave them alone so often and so loudly that men finally listened. And now that men have done exactly what they were told to do, the same voices are confused about why nobody is breaking the rules to come save them from the consequences of their own instructions. Let me take you back so you understand how we got here, because this did not happen overnight. This was 50 years in the making. It started with waves of ideology that told women they did not need men, that men were the problem, that masculinity itself was toxic, that any natural male behavior was a threat that needed to be punished. They created terms like manspreading to shame men for the crime of having legs and sitting comfortably on public transportation. They turned family courts into wealth extraction machines where a man could lose his children, his home, his savings, and half his future income just for the crime of getting married and believing it meant something. They weaponized false accusations and turned the phrase, believe all women, into a blank check to destroy any man who dared to have boundaries or standards. They built entire social media ecosystems designed to shame men for approaching, for looking, for speaking, for breathing too loudly in the vicinity of the modern woman. And every step of the way they celebrated, they danced on TikTok. They made millions of dollars writing articles about how men were obsolete. They told young boys in school that their energy was a disorder that needed medication. They told grown men that wanting a family made them controlling. They told every male on earth that his natural instincts were the enemy. And for decades, a lot of men tried to play by these new rules. But rules only work when both sides agree to follow them. And at some point, millions of men looked around and realized the game was rigged from the start. They realized that no matter how much they shrank themselves, no matter how much they apologized for existing, no matter how much money they spent, time they gave, attention they poured out, the goalposts kept moving and the punishment never stopped. So they did the one thing nobody expected them to do. They stopped playing altogether. They walked away. Not in anger at first, not with some big dramatic speech, just quietly. One by one, they deleted the dating apps. They stopped going to the clubs. They stopped asking women out to dinner they knew would lead nowhere. They stopped sending money to Cash App links in Instagram bios. They stopped caring about being called bitter or insecure or afraid of strong women. They simply chose peace over performance. And in choosing peace, they accidentally discovered something the system never wanted them to find. They discovered that life without all of that chaos is actually pretty good. Think about what the average man needs to be happy. It is not complicated. Good sleep, good food, some exercise, a couple close friends, a purpose to wake up for, and the freedom to enjoy his own time without constant drama or criticism. That is it. Men are naturally minimalist. We do not need walk in closets full of clothes we never wear. We do not need to be told 50 times a day that we are loved as long as we feel respected twice a year. We do not need constant validation from strangers on the internet. Give a man a comfortable place to live, enough money to cover his bills and stack the rest, a gym membership or a garage to lift in, a PlayStation or a good book, and some peace and quiet, and he will live like a king. And that is exactly what millions of men are doing right now. They are living quiet and simple, luxurious lives while the world that told them they were worthless screams for them to come back and fix everything they broke. Meanwhile, the women who spent years bragging that they were the table, that a man should be grateful just to sit near them, are now discovering that a table with no chairs is just a flat piece of wood nobody wants to stand around. They are discovering that independence feels amazing when somebody else is still paying all the bills behind the scenes. They are discovering that when the state checks start shrinking and the rent keeps climbing and the groceries cost more every week, having a ring light and a positive attitude does not actually pay for anything. And the most dangerous part for them is that men already know this. Men have already done the math. Men have already watched the pattern play out enough times to trust observable reality over pretty words and promises. And the observable reality right now is that the cost of dealing with modern dating and modern relationships is infinitely higher than the reward. So the smartest move is to remove yourself completely from the equation. Every day, another video goes viral of a woman in her 30s crying because she cannot find a man who meets her standards while she openly admits Those standards include him making six figures, being over 6 feet tall, having no children. Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now. And being willing to accept her 3 children from 3 different men. Every day, another influencer posts a rant about how men are the problem because they refuse to date single mothers while she shows off the new designer bag she bought instead of saving for her kids' future. Every day, another dating coach for women tells her audience that the reason they are alone is because they are too high value and men are intimidated, never once mentioning that maybe, just maybe, men looked at the offer on the table and decided it was not worth the price of admission. And every day, more men see those videos, laugh, close the app, and go back to building the life that brings them peace. This is not about hate. This is about consequences. This is about a generation of men who were told their entire lives that they were the source of all evil in the world, finally deciding to test that theory by removing themselves from the world and watching what happens. And what is happening is exactly what any rational person would have predicted. When you spend decades punishing the people who build everything, protect everything, pay for everything, and fix everything, eventually those people figure out they do not have to keep showing up. And once they figure that out, good luck getting them to come back. Now, let us talk about the part nobody on mainstream platforms wants to say out loud: the economic devastation that follows when men collectively decide that spending money on dates, drinks, trips, gifts, weddings, houses, and children they may never get to raise is no longer a smart investment. Because when men walk away, they do not just walk away from women, they walk away from an entire consumer economy that was built on the assumption that men would never stop paying for access, attention, and approval. That assumption is currently collapsing in real time, and the numbers are brutal. Nightclubs, as I already mentioned, are only the surface. Entire industries are feeling the earthquake. High-end restaurants that used to survive on first date bills, where the man paid $200 or $300 for a woman he met on Hinge, are closing locations or switching to lunch-only service because the dinner crowd disappeared. Luxury handbag companies that marketed almost exclusively to women who expected men to finance their collections are watching sales drop year after year. Jewelry stores that once made their fourth quarter numbers on engagement rings are boarding up windows. Wedding venues that charge $50,000 for a Saturday are now begging for Tuesday bookings at half price. Bridal magazines have folded. Even cosmetic dentistry and plastic surgery clinics that catered to women in their late 20s and early 30s who wanted to lock down a high value man are reporting massive drops in bookings because the high value men stopped showing up to be locked down. Follow the money and you see the truth faster than any lecture ever could. Men used to spend disposable income on experiences designed to impress women who had already decided they were not impressed. That money flowed through the economy like oxygen. Remove the oxygen, and everything starts to suffocate. And the most fascinating part is that men are not broke. They are richer than they have ever been. They simply changed where the money goes. Instead of $500 dates that end with, "I see you more as a friend," that money now goes into index funds, crypto portfolios, gym equipment, better apartments they do not have to share, trucks they actually wanted, firearms, land, tools, and businesses. Men are stacking wealth at a rate previous generations never thought possible because for the first time in their lives, they are not bleeding cash into a black hole of female validation. Look at the personal savings rate for men under 40. It is climbing while the savings rate for women in the same age group is negative in many Western countries. Men are paying off debt, building emergency funds, buying assets that appreciate, and sleeping like babies at night because nobody is texting them at 2 in the morning asking where the relationship is going. Women, on the other hand, are taking out payment plans for designer clothes they post on Instagram to attract the men who no longer care about designer clothes on Instagram. The wealth transfer that used to go from men to women through dating, marriage, and divorce has reversed. And the reversal is permanent because men have finally run the numbers and realized the return on investment was always negative. Dating apps are the perfect laboratory to watch this play out in public. Companies like Match Group, which owns Tinder, Hinge, Bumble, and a dozen others, have been quietly warning investors for 3 years that their most profitable users, average men who kept swiping and paying for premium features, are disappearing. The average male user now opens the app less than once a week, if at all. The companies tried everything. They limited likes, they created artificial scarcity, they raised prices, they introduced women and message first rules that backfired spectacularly because most women will not message first even when the app begs them to. The result is that the apps are now flooded with women competing for the attention of a tiny handful of men who still bother to log in. And even those men are mostly there for entertainment, not serious investment. Stock prices for these companies have been cut in half, or worse, since the peak. And executives openly admit in earnings calls that they do not know how to fix the problem because they cannot force men to come back and subsidize the experience anymore. And the women on these apps are starting to feel the panic. You see it in the profiles. The tone has shifted from, you must be this tall to ride, to just looking for someone genuine who knows how to treat a woman. Translation, please someone pay for dinner again. The bios that used to say no hookups, my time is valuable, now say open to whatever happens naturally. Translation, I will settle for anything that keeps me from dying alone. The age filters that used to stop at 35 now go to 55. The income requirements that used to start at six figures now say just have a job. The same women who spent years bragging that they would rather talk to a wall than lower their standards are now negotiating with the wall because the wall is the only thing still listening. But the wall is not listening either because the wall is busy. The wall is in the gym adding 20 pounds to its bench press. The wall is closing real estate deals. The wall is learning to trade options. The wall is taking its dog for a hike and enjoying the silence. The wall finally realized that peace is not the absence of noise, it is the presence of options. And for the first time in modern history, men have options that do not involve constant criticism, financial exploitation, and the threat of having their lives destroyed on a whim. Now, let us talk about the state, because this is the part where a lot of people thought they had a backup plan. For decades, women were sold the idea that government could replace men, that welfare, child support enforcement, affirmative action, and endless social programs would provide the protection and provision that men used to provide. And for a while it worked because the government was borrowing money from the future and men were still paying the majority of the taxes that funded everything. But the future has arrived and the credit card is maxed out. Inflation is eating savings alive. Taxes are going up while services are going down. Countries all over the West are raising retirement ages, cutting benefits, and openly admitting they cannot afford the promises they made when they told women they would never need a man again. Look at what is happening in the United Kingdom right now. Single mothers who relied on government benefits as their primary income are being told those benefits are being capped or phased out because the country cannot afford them anymore. In the United States, states are running out of money for child support enforcement offices because the federal reimbursements dried up. Women who built their entire life plan around the idea that the state would play husband are now discovering that the state is a deadbeat who never even bought them dinner first. And the men who used to be forced to pay through taxes and garnished wages are now opting out of the system entirely by staying single, keeping their income low enough to avoid the highest tax brackets, or simply leaving the country altogether for places where the government has not yet decided to replace husbands with bureaucracy. The passport bro phenomenon is not a meme, it is a rational response to a broken system. Men are voting with their feet. They are moving to countries where women still value masculinity, where family courts do not exist to destroy men, where a man can build a life without the constant threat of having everything taken away because somebody decided his natural behavior was toxic. And the women in those countries are welcoming these men with open arms because they never drank the poison that told them men were the enemy. Meanwhile, back home, the women who spent years celebrating the destruction of traditional relationships are now making videos asking why all the good men are leaving the country. The answer is simple: the good men followed the incentives, and the incentives all pointed to exit. At this point, some of you are probably thinking this sounds extreme. You are thinking there must be some middle ground, some way to fix this before everything falls apart completely. And 10 years ago, I might have agreed with you. But we are past the point of middle ground because the middle ground was destroyed on purpose. The same voices that told men to man up and marry the single mothers are the same voices that told men never to approach women in public. The same voices that said men need to take accountability are the same voices that made accountability a one-way street. The same voices that demanded respect told men that respect is earned while treating men like walking ATMs who should be grateful for the privilege of being used. There is no middle ground with people who spent decades moving the goalposts every time men got close. The only rational response is to stop playing the game entirely. And here's the part that keeps women up at night: men are not angry anymore. That is what terrifies them the most. Angry men can be negotiated with. Angry men can be shamed. Angry men can be convinced to come back and try again if you offer them enough incentives. But the men who have walked away today are not angry. They are calm. They are content. They are genuinely happy for the first time in their adult lives. They wake up without dread. They go to bed without arguments. They have money in the bank and no one screaming at them about where it needs to go. They have peace, and peace is the one thing you cannot negotiate with. Once a man finds peace, he will move mountains to protect it. And no amount of crying on TikTok or promises of better behavior in the future will ever be enough to make him trade that peace for the chaos he already escaped. Let me paint you a picture of what an average Thursday looks like now for a man who has completely walked away and embraced the life he was told he was never supposed to want. He wakes up at 7:30 or 8 or 9 whenever his body feels like it because nobody is in the other room slamming cabinets because he forgot to take the trash out the night before. The apartment is quiet, clean, paid for, and decorated exactly how he wants it. Big TV, leather couch, a fridge full of food he actually likes, no decorative pillows that cost $200 and serve no purpose. He brews a pot of coffee, checks his portfolio on the phone, sees another $200 in gains from the index funds he has been buying instead of buying designer purses for women who ghosted him, smiles, and heads to the gym in the building or the garage where he built a full power rack during the pandemic. By 10:30, he is back, showered, eating 6 eggs and a ribeye. He cooked himself for less than the price of one cocktail a woman used to expect him to buy her at happy hour. He opens the laptop, knocks out 4 or 5 hours of high focus remote work or trades or content creation or whatever his actual passion is because his mind is clear and his time is his own. No surprise 3 hour arguments about tone of voice, no passive aggressive comments about how he never plans anything, no last minute guilt trips because somebody wants to go to brunch with people he cannot stand. Just pure, uninterrupted flow state, the kind of focus that turns good men into wealthy men faster than any college degree ever could. Around 3, he takes the dog for a long walk or hops on the mountain bike or meets one of his boys for a lift session. These are the same friends who used to cancel plans because their girlfriends did not like them going out. Now, those friends are free too, and the friendships are deeper than they have been since high school because nobody has to check in with headquarters before making a decision. They talk about real things, business ideas, market moves, land they want to buy, skills they are mastering. Nobody is competing to see who has the worst relationship story anymore because nobody has a relationship and nobody misses it. Evenings are whatever he wants. Maybe he plays a couple hours of a new game he actually enjoys instead of sitting through another season of a show he hates because somebody else controls the remote. Maybe he reads half a book in one night because nobody is sighing loudly about how he never gives them attention. Maybe he just sits on the balcony with a cigar and a glass of something strong and watches the city lights while feeling zero guilt about the fact that his phone has not buzzed in 6 hours. His money is growing. His body is getting stronger. His mind is sharper than it has been since he was 15. And most importantly, the constant background noise of criticism, drama, and financial hemorrhage is gone. That is not deprivation. That is the definition of wealth. Now, contrast that with the average day for a woman in her mid 30s who spent the last decade and a half repeating the script she was sold. She wakes up in an apartment she can barely afford because she has to live in the trendy part of town to keep the Instagram aesthetic alive. The cat is yelling for food, but the cat is the closest thing she has to a dependent who actually appreciates her. She scrolls TikTok for 45 minutes before getting out of bed and sees another video of a former friend announcing a pregnancy or an engagement, feels the stab in her chest, closes the app, opens it again 5 minutes later because the silence is worse. She drags herself to a corporate job she hates but cannot leave because lifestyle costs are locked in, and lifestyle is the only thing that still distracts her from the quiet panic that is starting to feel permanent. Lunch is a $60 salad with girlfriends, where the entire conversation is about how there are no good men left, and how dating apps are broken, and how their exes were trash, but at least those exes used to pay for things. By 4 o'clock, she is exhausted from performing confidence for people who are just as scared as she is. She gets home, pours a glass of wine that costs more than his ribeye, opens the dating apps, swipes for an hour, gets 6 matches who all send the same low effort messages, unmatched 3 of them for not being exciting enough, and goes to bed wondering why nothing ever changes. The weekend is coming and she already knows it will be the same cycle. Overpriced brunches, group photos for the grid, clubs where nobody buys bottles anymore, and Sunday night anxiety about turning another year older with nothing real to show for it except follower count and credit card debt. That is not hyperbole. That is the statistical reality for millions of women right now. Study after study is coming out showing the largest drop in female happiness ever recorded in the United States and Western Europe. Women under 40 are reporting higher rates of depression, anxiety, and loneliness than any generation before them, while men in the same age group are reporting the highest levels of life satisfaction in decades. The happiness gap that used to favor women by double digits has not only closed, it has reversed. Men are pulling away in every measurable category of well being. And the only variable that changed is that men stopped participating in the system that was making them miserable. And before anyone says this is just about the top 20% of men, save it. The data does not lie. The increase in male happiness is across all income levels, all education levels, all races. The only common denominator is relationship status. Single men with no children are the happiest demographic in the Western world right now. Married men with children are the least happy. Childless single women are the least happy. The pattern is so clear that even the corporate media outlets that spent years denying it are starting to publish panicked articles with headlines like, "The rise of the lonely single man is a myth," right before the data in the same article proves the exact opposite. Birth rates are the final nail. Countries like South Korea are now at 0.72 children per woman. Italy, Spain, Japan, all under 1.3. The United States just hit its lowest birth rate ever recorded and keeps falling. Replacement level is 2.1. Anything under that means the population starts shrinking in one generation. Anything under 1.5 means collapse within 2 generations. We are watching entire civilizations choose extinction because women waited too long. And men decided the price of admission to fatherhood was no longer worth paying. And the craziest part is that nobody is forcing this. Women still have the ability to change the offer. They could wake up tomorrow, lower standards to reality, accept that a decent man who treats them well is worth more than a fantasy checklist, and start building families with the millions of men who are standing right there. But they will not, because that would require admitting they were wrong. And ego is the one currency most people will die before spending. Instead, we get an endless parade of coping mechanisms. We get articles blaming dating apps. We get think pieces blaming pornography. We get talking heads blaming video games. We get influencers telling women to freeze their eggs and travel and live their best life while quietly leaving out the part where the best life has an expiration date written in biology that no amount of positive affirmations can negotiate with. And every year that passes, another wave of women crosses the line from picky to permanently alone while telling themselves it was all worth it because at least they never settled. Meanwhile, the men they rejected for not being 6 feet tall or six figures are living better than they ever would have with those women dragging them down. The regret phase is coming, and when it hits, it is going to be biblical. We are already seeing the early stages. Women who spent their 20s and early 30s chasing careers and experiences, and the top 10% of men are now hitting 35, 38, 42, and realizing the careers pay half of what they need to live the life they want. The experiences are memories nobody cares about anymore. And the top 10% of men are either married to younger women or perfectly happy staying single. The panic is palpable. The videos are getting more desperate. The tone has shifted from "I do not need a man" to "where are all the men who are willing to commit?" as if commitment was ever the problem and not the terms being offered. And men are watching all of it in real time, eating steak, lifting heavier, stacking money, and feeling zero obligation to fix what they did not break. Because here is the secret nobody wanted men to figure out. Society only works when men agree to participate. Everything from taxes to infrastructure to defense to innovation runs on male labor, male sacrifice, and male taxes. When men decide the juice is not worth the squeeze and withdraw their participation, the whole thing grinds to a halt. And that is exactly what we are watching right now in slow motion. Let us go straight to the part that makes people the most uncomfortable, because it is the part nobody is allowed to say out loud without being accused of cruelty. Biology does not negotiate, and the bill for pretending otherwise is now coming due for an entire generation of women who were told their fertility is a social construct and that 35 is the new 25. Go to any major fertility clinic in New York, Los Angeles, London, or Sydney right now and ask the doctors off the record what they are seeing. They will tell you the waiting list for egg freezing and IVF have never been longer. And the average age of the women on those lists keeps climbing. 10 years ago, the typical egg freezing patient was 32 or 33. Today, the average is 39, and a growing percentage is over 42. Doctors are doing more IVF cycles on women over 40 than ever before in history, and the success rates are brutal. A healthy woman under 35 has roughly a 50 to 60% chance of a live birth per IVF cycle with her own eggs. By 40, that drops to 15%. By 43, it is single digits. By 45, it is effectively zero unless donor eggs are used. And donor eggs mean the child is not biologically hers. A fact many women refuse to accept until the third or fourth failed cycle finally forces the conversation. The clinics are making more money than ever because desperation pays premium prices. But the doctors quietly admit in private that most of these women waited 5 to 8 years too long while chasing careers, travel, situationships, and men who were very clear they were never going to commit. They were told by influencers, by magazines, by celebrities, by their own friend groups that they had all the time in the world, that men would always be waiting whenever they decided to flip the switch and become the wife and mother they spent a decade saying they never wanted to be. And now they are standing in $1,000 consultations learning that the switch does not exist. Biology already flipped it for them years ago while they were busy posting living my best life captions under pictures in Dubai. And the worst part is that many of them still do not fully grasp what has happened. They think one or two rounds of IVF will fix everything. They think the first failed cycle was bad luck. They think the second failed cycle was the clinic's fault. They think the third failed cycle can be solved by going vegan or doing acupuncture or manifesting harder. By the time they finally accept the math, they have spent $100,000 or more. Their credit is destroyed, their mental health is shattered, and the men they wanted are either married to women 10 years younger or perfectly content staying single and child free. The coping becomes audible. You hear it in the comment sections. I would rather be alone than settle. Children are a burden anyway. I am focusing on my purpose. All of it is armor against the quiet moments at 2 in the morning when the truth slips past the defense mechanisms and whispers that the life they were promised never actually existed. Men, on the other hand, have a completely different timeline. A healthy man can father children into his 50s and 60s without medical intervention. The risk goes up, yes, but it never drops to zero. That asymmetry has always existed, but for the first time in history, men are refusing to play the old game of locking themselves into marriages at 28 to women who want to wait until 38 to start a family. Men looked at the offer, ran the numbers, and decided the downside risk of paying 18 years of child support plus college tuition for a child he might only see every other weekend was no longer worth the upside of maybe getting regular intimacy and occasional peace in his own home. The juice is not worth the squeeze when the squeeze can destroy your entire financial and emotional life on a whim. So men are opting out of fatherhood entirely. And the ones who still want children are either finding younger women who never bought the lie, or they are simply choosing peace over legacy. And before anyone says that is selfish, understand that men spent decades being told their only value was provision and protection. The moment they take that provision and protection and redirect it toward themselves, suddenly they are the villains for doing exactly what they were told to do: focus on number one. While all of this is happening, men are quietly building parallel societies that women cannot easily access. Private men's gyms are popping up in every major city, places where women are not allowed, not out of hatred, but because men finally want one space where they can train, talk, and breathe without being accused of staring or making someone uncomfortable simply for existing. Discord servers, Telegram groups, private forums, and local meetups have exploded in membership, all centered around male self improvement, wealth building, physical training, and complete emotional independence from female approval. These are not hate groups, these are support groups for men who realized the rest of the world was never going to support them, so they built their own table instead of begging for a seat at one that kept getting pulled away. Entire economies are forming inside these spaces. Men are starting businesses together, investing in each other's projects, sharing trades, sharing land purchases, creating networks that operate, and women cannot infiltrate because the entry requirement is simple: add value and bring peace. Drama is banned on site. Complaining is banned on site. Victimhood is banned on site. The energy is solution oriented, forward moving, and ruthlessly positive. And the craziest part is how fast these networks are growing. What started as a few hundred guys in a Discord 5 years ago is now tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands globally, all supporting each other while the mainstream world pretends they do not exist. Women are starting to notice the absence. They feel it in the silence on dating apps. They feel it when they walk into a bar and nobody looks up from their phone to buy them a drink. They feel it when their male coworkers stop engaging in small talk and just do the job and go home. They feel it when the tradesmen they call to fix something at the house are polite, professional, and completely uninterested in anything beyond the invoice. The attention faucet that was always turned on full blast has been shut off, and the drought is real. And the drought is permanent because trust has been destroyed at a civilizational level. Men have watched their fathers, brothers, friends, and coworkers get destroyed in divorce courts. They have watched false accusations end careers overnight. They have watched paternity fraud exposed years later with zero consequences for the woman who lied. They have watched the rules change every day for 20 years and realized the only winning move is not to play. You cannot shame a man who has nothing left to lose and everything to protect. You cannot negotiate with a man who has already found peace. And you definitely cannot guilt a man who has seen the pattern so many times that he trusts observable reality over anything any woman or institution says. This is the new normal, and it is spreading faster than anyone wants to admit. Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia, Latin America, men are moving in waves. The ones who stay are building fortresses of solitude that are so comfortable, most of them never want to leave. The birth rate collapse is locked in for at least 2 generations in most Western countries. The marriage rate collapse is locked in. The happiness reversal is locked in. And the best part for men is that none of this required protest, none of it required violence, none of it required asking permission. It only required millions of individual men making the same quiet decision. My peace is non negotiable. And here we are at the final act, the part where everything that has been building for 50 years finally lands, and the consequences become impossible to ignore, even for the people who spent decades pretending consequences do not apply to them. The regret wave is no longer coming, it is here. You see it every single day now if you know where to look. It is in the comment sections of influencers who built entire brands on boss babe energy and are suddenly posting tearful videos about how they would trade every designer bag for a family. It is in the private Facebook groups where women in their early 40s trade stories about failed IVF cycles and ask if anyone knows a good adoption attorney because the wait lists are years long and getting longer. It is in the corporate offices where women who bragged about having it all are quietly being passed over for promotions because the companies know they are one maternity leave away from disappearing for a decade, except the maternity leave never comes because the baby never comes. It is in the apartment leases that are not being renewed because one income can no longer cover the lifestyle that used to be subsidized by men who are no longer in the picture. The state is starting to panic. Politicians who spent years celebrating single motherhood and telling women they would be taken care of forever are now looking at the demographic spreadsheets and realizing the pyramid has inverted. There are not enough young workers to pay for the retiring population. And the retiring population is disproportionately female because women live longer and men have been dying earlier from stress, overwork, and everything else that was demanded of them to keep the system running. Countries are rolling out incentives most people never thought they would see: tax breaks for getting married before 30, outright cash payments for having children, subsidized housing for young families. And in some Eastern European nations, they are openly discussing penalties for remaining childless past a certain age. None of it is working because incentives only work when both sides still want the same thing and men no longer want the thing being offered. The shame campaigns have already started too. Articles with headlines like "The Male Loneliness Epidemic is a Public Health Crisis," written by the same publications that spent 20 years telling men their loneliness was their own fault for not being good enough. Podcasts where former feminists lecture men about how they have a duty to society to get married and have children, completely ignoring the fact that duty was a one-way street when it was men doing all the paying and all the sacrificing. Politicians are floating ideas about taxing single men at a higher rate to fund social programs, as if punishing men for refusing to participate will somehow convince them to volunteer for more punishment. It will not work. You cannot shame a man who has already been shamed for existing. You cannot tax a man who has already structured his life to stay below the radar. You cannot draft a man into marriage and fatherhood when he watched his father get destroyed and decided the risk is not worth the reward. The harder they push, the faster men disappear, either geographically or into cash only economies, crypto wallets, remote work, and lifestyles that leave no paper trail for the state to follow. The black market for freedom is booming, and the currency is peace. The economy is next. We are already seeing the early contractions. Retail brands that targeted women's discretionary spending are closing stores by the thousands. Cosmetic companies are laying off staff. Luxury travel is down. Bridal is dead. Entire sectors that relied on male simps and female consumerism are shrinking, while male dominated sectors like tools, firearms, outdoor gear, home gym equipment, and personal development are exploding. The money did not disappear, it just changed hands. Men took the disposable income they used to set on fire trying to impress women and redirected it into things that actually improve their lives. The result is the largest silent wealth transfer in modern history, and it is only accelerating. And in 10 years, the landscape will be unrecognizable. Cities that were built around nightlife and dating culture will have empty towers and ghost districts because the tax base walked away. Countries that imported millions of fighting age men to replace the children they never had will deal with the consequences of that decision in real time. Women who are 50 and 60 will be living 10 or 20 to a house like Golden Girl communes because pensions collapsed and they never built wealth when they had the chance. And men will be scattered across the planet in small compounds, rural land, expat communities, and quiet suburbs, living simple, wealthy, drama free lives, surrounded by other men who made the same choice. The men who fully internalize the lesson will be the freest human beings who ever lived. They will own their time completely. They will have multiple income streams that cannot be taken away. They will have bodies that still work at 70 because they never stop training. They will have friendships forged in purpose instead of convenience. They will wake up every single day knowing that nobody can ruin their life with a phone call to HR or a knock on the door from family court. They will have zero regrets because they saw the game for what it was while there was still time to walk away clean. And the most powerful part of all of this is that it happened without a single shot fired, without a single protest, without asking permission from anyone. Millions of individual men simply looked at the deal on the table, looked at the consequences of accepting that deal, looked at the peace on the other side, and chose themselves. That is the ultimate power. That is the red pill in its purest form. Not hate, not revenge, just rational self interest applied at scale. So if you are a man watching this and you are still on the fence, understand the door is closing, but it is not closed yet. Every day you stay in the old system is another day you bleed time, money, and life force into a machine that will never love you back. Every day you choose peace is another brick in the fortress nobody can ever take from you. The longer you wait, the more expensive the exit becomes. But the exit still exists. And on the other side is a life better than anything you were ever told you were allowed to want. We are done here. The message is delivered. The pattern is clear. The future is written by the men who refuse to hand over their pens. What did you think about all of this? Do you agree? Do you see it playing out in your own city, your own friend group, your own life? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Like the video if you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away, and cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.